Okay, welcome to our webinar that we have entitled How Advanced Golf Transforms Golf Clubs into High Growth Businesses. Advanced Golf, we're going to introduce now, are represented by Larry Galloway, who's one of the owners, operators. One would think that this is a management group, but we have been taught that it isn't in the classic sense, but there is a lot of management group knowledge behind how Advanced Golf do their business. So Larry, thank you so much for joining us. A pleasure to have you. You are absolutely passionate about golf. You're passionate about the experience. You're passionate about business. You're passionate about people. And fortunately for us, you're passionate about sharing some of your knowledge. So yeah, welcome. And I'd love for you to give us a quick intro into yourself and also what you guys do at Advanced Golf Partners.
Sure. So I've been in the golf business. I turned 66 years old next month. And I've been in the golf business since I learned I wasn't going to play on the professional tour at about age 20, 21. I started working in the golf business because my dream was, my first dream wasn't going to work out. And worked for Club Corp for quite a long time. I started as a assistant golf pro, club manager. Eventually, regional manager. Eventually, I became the job that really taught me the beginning of what I've learned now. It was director of golf development. And so I was in my 40s at the time, early 40s, and I would travel all across the country. Club Corp had 100 golf courses, and it was my job to try to touch every one of them and evaluate their golf revenue strategies and see if I could introduce some new programming. What got me that job was in Queens Harbor. I transformed that club from making approximately, me and my team transformed it from making approximately $250,000 a year to $1.2 million a year in profit. So we did that over a couple of years, and then they just kept wanting me to plug in more and more places and see if I could sprinkle the same kind of fairy dust on their properties. So I did that, and then I was asked to join Jim Hinckley and a couple other founding partners at Century Golf Partners under the Arnold Palmer Golf Management flag, and I did that for about 10 years. I oversaw a portfolio of 50 daily fee, semi-private and resort properties. And I did that. And at that point, I kind of, my career, I'd worked up, to what I really wanted, which was to be a founding partner of a growing golf company. At the time I resigned, we had about 80 golf courses. I, for personal reasons mainly, I decided I didn't want to be part of a venture capital backed golf company, a big golf company any longer. It didn't align with my personal vision of where the golf business needed to go. It taught me during the 06 and 08 problems with real estate and banking, the way that those companies reacted to those hard times, unwilling to stand up for what I believed in, whether it was responsible stewardship of the assets or the way people, customers, and employees were treated. To me, it was just a disconnect I couldn't live with. And so anyway, I left. And I thought, I'll buy a couple of golf courses with some friends and I'll retire. And it turns out that owning a couple of golf courses is not retirement. It's a lot of work. And so I thought, well, if I buy a few more, I'll be able to create a little bit of a structure here of other partners, and then I'll be able to retire. So 12, 14 golf courses later, I'm not retired. I have a lot of wonderful relationships with investor partners and operating partners. Every deal we take on is its own LLC. It's its own entity. It has its own team of investors, its own team of operators. There is overlap to a certain degree at some of them. There's no overlap other than me on all of them. We're not a management company. We don't charge the entities or the club's management fees. We get paid, I get paid after we've taken care of the asset, well, the bank debt, the asset, CapEx reserve, CapEx leases, investor returns of a minimum 12%. And when we've achieved all those things, I get to start getting paid. So there's a real incentive for the operating partners like myself to take care of the asset, take care of the bank, take care of the investors so that we have enough money to eventually pay ourselves. Fortunately, for the most part, that's gone well. And so that's a little, it's about as fast as I can go through the last 40 years.
That was wonderful and fast indeed. So two things stand out. One is that you obviously have both the experience from having worked with a couple of hundred facilities, but also having given back to many in terms of structures and so on. And that's what we want to shine a light on today. And the other thing that stands out is when you're mentioning 2008 crunch and how the company you were tied with at the time handled it. So this year you got the unfortunate repeat of that and got to be in the driving seat of managing that crisis. I know everyone who's online now has been exposed to that. And how have you found that? And were you able to stick to your values when it really counted?
Sure. That was, in March and April, especially when many of our golf courses were either being shut down completely, a couple of them. One, the county imposed a rule where tee times were on 12-minute intervals and only one golfer per tee time. One golfer, not one golfer per cart, one golfer per tee time. And of course, restaurants were closed down. It was tough. I'm proud of the fact that we didn't change our maintenance practices. We did not call up our superintendents and say, hey, look, things are tough. We want you to skip a fertilizer cycle, or we want to change anything. We didn't lay any employees off. We didn't lay anybody off. Of course, later, what changed dramatically was the Congress voted in all these support, PPP support for payroll, huge help. We did apply for some EIDL loans, SBA disaster loans, which are 30-year loans at roughly 3%, tremendous terms that would made up for the money we lost in March and April. It was an offset to that. And then as we've learned, as people have fewer choices, fewer safe choices for how to get out and recreate or have some fun, golf has prevailed. Golf has really been fantastic for us, especially the last 3 or 4 months, just unbelievable. And I think that's common across a lot of golf assets.
Yeah, you're quite right. That's something that from our side, and if you'd allow me a quick introduction to what we do, because I know that while we have a number of friends and existing partners on these webinars, there's always new faces and new people. And so we have seen a huge rebound in activity, because what we do is we track on-course, the on-course operation and anything that moves on the course, with a particular focus on managing the flow of play and to allow operators to get the most out of that part of their asset. We have at this point tracked 12 million rounds, and we've got about 300 clubs that work with us. There's a fantastic list of high-end major hosting clubs. Some of them, unfortunately, we're missing out on the big stage this year, or certainly the fans, and Wingfoot, for instance, that one of our partners we work with. There's your Pebble Beach, Erin Hills, high-end daily fee, as well as private clubs. But why it's so exciting for me to have Larry online is because his clubs and the clubs that Advanced Golf Partners looks after are very different to those. They're really middle-of-the-road clubs. And that is where most of our clubs are at home. And I have been on, I remember on one weekend, I went to Pinehurst, to the hallowed turf of Pinehurst. And then in a 20-minute drive, I was at a club of yours, Seven Lakes, that is also in Pinehurst, where you can play a round of golf for $30. And it was just incredible how different these operations are, but how they have similar values that they strive for, and they know what to tweak and they know what to look for. Now, Seven Lakes does that with 15 people or 20 people, and Pinehurst with 1,000. But that was really great to see, and just how switched on the guys were at Seven Lakes. So what we want to do today, Larry, is to look at 4 key points. What are the key success factors at daily fee courses? I don't think we need to be exclusive here, because a lot of this applies to semi-private and private clubs as well. Then we want to look at a growth case study and some of the learnings. I'm sure with all that success came many failures, and that's one of them that you got to learn from. We want to look at what are the on-course management and service pro tips that you impart on your teams and that you want to see managed well. And then lastly, we want to look at price elasticity, which is very exciting. And how do you turn those things into profitability? Because, well, not every setup is as yours, where you really are last in line, but every operation needs to turn a profit, and that is hard enough. So what I would like to do before we get started, it's always great to get a reading of the room, is do a quick poll on what do you guys think are the key player experience factors according to players. So think of yourself as a player and what is important to you, and you can pick 3 out of this list. So I'm launching a poll now. Larry, I'm not sure if you can see that. We can probably see poll results coming through if they do. If nobody's clicking on the poll, that means the poll is not working. So what are the top 3 experience factors according to players that you think? And there's course design, there's playing partners, who's in my group, who am I playing with, tee time availability, clubhouse amenities, and all of that. So we've got some votes crashing in here. Always great to see how low ranking course design is in terms of experience, and how high ranking course conditioning is. Let me just end the poll so we can see what we're doing, share results. Okay, Larry, any surprises here when it comes to the player experience factors that our crowd, obviously a sample of 50 people, finds important? Can you see those?
I think, no, there's really no surprises. I think who's in my group, players I play with, perhaps in my opinion, has a little larger impact on where people play. And they may already be taking that for granted in the survey, that they already have play patterns that exist because of their friends that they play with, but they're not even thinking about that's already been decided. Maybe, I don't know. But no, certainly course conditioning, pace of play. And what's great about those is those are within your control to be great at. You know, course design, you have to, you know, it's either really expensive to change or you have to live with what you got. It's very hard to influence who people want to play golf with. Now, we're working on that, but it's very hard to do that. Tee time accessibility, that's also within your control. So anyway, no surprises.
And our sample of 50 and our sample of Larry is spot on in terms of course conditioning, also with this large scale survey that the USGA has done a few years ago. And again, into 2019, 82%, that is the top scoring experience factor is course conditioning. And Augusta has probably got a role to play in that, and how we experience golf on television, right, is for those expectations to rise. But what's very close to that, and that is always a surprise, maybe it isn't, is pace and flow of play and the time it takes to play. And in between that, funny enough, Larry, you're quite right, is my playing partners, who am I playing with, who am I paired with? That is very highly ranked as well. So as far as your operations go, and the a couple of 100,000 rounds that you guys are driving every year, what are the key success factors over and above this, or maybe including this, that you put a lot of emphasis on at your clubs? What's the fairy dust? What's the magic sauce that, that you have?
Sure. The one question missing from the survey that might be included in the future would be what it cost. Because the surveys I used to conduct, which had basically the same answers, I also had what it cost, and that always ranked top 3. And we'll speak to that at the very end of this as it relates to price elasticity, because the things I'm about to speak to are intended to desensitize the response of what it cost. I want people's choices as it relates to where they play golf to have less and less to do with commoditization on like Golf Now or other websites that commoditize golf under a heading of price, because they don't talk about course conditionings or course design or tee times or pace of play management. It's tee time accessibility. It's price and tee time accessibility.
Sure.
And so they've taken 2 of the variables, which in my mind should matter the least as far as the overall experience, and they've prioritized those. So I'm very much anti that. And so since I'm anti that, I'm for the things we're going to discuss here now.
But funny enough, you mentioned those things that are in the control of the operator. Well, if you're thinking availability and pricing, that is the one thing that a Golf Now, for instance, can control, right? So they do. Yeah. But it's about what you control. So what are some of the magic source, like things that you guys do better than others, and that you stand for?
Yeah. So course conditions is number 1. They're on the golf course for the longest time during their stay, and they're there to play golf. So the way they interact with the turf itself, the greens, the fairways, the turf, how they interact with the turf. And so, without getting into too much agronomy, it turns out that's not about too many complicated things. If you give the superintendent the authority and you empower him to fertilize more than adequately, to use the pre-emergent weed control chemicals that he wants to use, to fight pest and to fight any weed outbreak with post-emergent controlling chemicals. If you give him the flexibility, most superintendents are quite good at growing great lush green turf. And then if you give him a really good mechanic with a really good reel grinder and the equipment that they need to mow it, they'll get a really good cut on it. So if you can have lush turf and you get a good cut on it, and it's clean and it doesn't have much in the way of weed intrusion, you're way down the road. And the gap between doing those things, allowing that superintendent to be empowered to do those things the way he wants to do them, and the way a typical big management company would budget for him to do it, is about $100,000 a year. That's about what it is, including the equipment variance. And so that seems like a lot of money unless you have a plan to make $1 million more. If you have a plan to make $1 million more, then it's just a piece of the puzzle that a building block. So that's the most important thing. Pace of play is absolutely a critical factor, because as we've succeeded, we've learned that what accompanies success is being busy and being crowded. And if you don't look like you know how to be crowded and know how to be busy, then people stop coming to you. And
sure.
I have a brief story about that if you'd like me to tell it at this point, Bodo, or not.
Yes, that is. I'm going to get that out of you in our next slide.
Okay, well, I'll wait there.
Brilliant
Okay.
story. But
So,
give me
case of
three
play,
more.
food. Yeah, food. One of the things that we focus highly on is food, the food experience. And it's not even, it's alluded to in the survey that says amenities, clubhouse
Sure.
amenities. But
Sure.
in my mind, that's pretty weak. But it's the whole industry, for the most part, is weak as it relates to impressive food, the kind of food that would cause somebody to come play golf at your location. One of the things I learned along the way is that golf course food is viewed fairly mediocre by most golfers, and provides a wonderful opportunity to surprise them and get them to form a different opinion about you. So food is one of our big success factors for us. And then lastly is our sales culture and membership program, and just kind of the programming for membership and the way we sell it through our on-site sales culture. And we get all our people at all levels involved in our sales goals and sales performance. So those really are the four main things that drive our success.
So when it comes to food, every advanced golf property has got a Michelin star chef and restaurant. Not right.
Not really.
You're doing certain things really well, right?
It turns out that golfers eat hamburgers and barbecue and pizza and drink beer and hot dogs and French fries. And it turns out there's a huge gap in quality that you can purchase as it relates to beef, ground beef. And there's a wide variety of tools that you can smoke and barbecue meats in. Most people buy those propane tanks that have been cut in half with a lid and spend $2,000 or $3,000. That's kind of, we spend $25,000 on a Southern Pride rotisserie gas and wood smoker. And the way we came to that is we just simply finally quit trying to figure it out ourselves. And we went to the very best barbecue restaurants we could find. And we just said, how do you do your food? They're like, oh, we use a Southern Pride rotisserie smoker. And I go to the next place, oh, we use a Southern Pride rotisserie smoker. Oh, we use a Southern Pride rotisserie smoker. I'm like, well, shit. I should have, 10 years ago, that's what I should have done, is ask that rather than go through 8 different versions of how to do barbecue.
Sure.
But anyway, yeah. So it ends up, you don't need a Michelin chef to do hamburgers and barbecue and French fries and beer. You don't.
So my experience when I go to just 45 minutes north of our Atlanta office is Bradshaw Farms. My experience there would be, it's a great turf to play on. There's friendly staff that are efficient. They know what they're doing. That's my sense. I'm going to get an excellent pizza or a really great burger. And I'll tell my friends about it. It does, and I can play in a good time. It doesn't take me an age, and I don't get frustrated. Is that simplified?
Yeah, that's really what I want. I want giant TVs. That's the other thing I do, and thank you for stretching it out of me, pulling it out of me. I basically try to wallpaper the inside of the clubhouse with 75 to 85 inch 4K TVs. I don't buy them at Costco and Sam's on purpose. I don't want the golfer, the customer, to think that my brand aligns with Sam's or with Costco. I just don't. That's why, Sam's and Costco don't carry Sony. And so typically we carry Sony because it has a brand quality, or,
sure.
I want to look like I have plenty of money. I'm not like trying to save money at Costco. And so, and then we put music in the Yamaha golf carts. I've been working with Yamaha now for 6 years on this. And finally, where it ended up was the Yamaha golf cart people smartened up and said, you know what, we're going to quit trying to figure this music and golf cart thing out. We're going to go talk to the Wave Runner group, the group that does music and wave runners that gets wet all the time because it's in a lake or, and so they put the Wave Runner music system, the Bluetooth Wave Runner music system in our golf carts. And so no number of cart boys spraying it down or rain. messes up the electronics. And so that's been wonderful. And then we put music at the driving ranges. We buy, there's various systems, won't go into it, but we make that driving range experience more immersive as well with music. So when you come, TVs, music on the course, music at the range, great food, unhealthy food, really high calorie food, great high calorie food, a wonderful selection of beer that's ice cold, great turf, great pace of play management. If we hit those nerves, if we are as good as we can be at those things, and we don't constrain ourselves with budgets for those things, we just simply try to explore how good we can be at those things using the best tools available, i.e. Tagmarshal. What we've learned is that we get overrun with customers. So,
on cue, Larry. So this is one of the many great examples that you've shared over. We've been working together now for 3 years, right? And I always get my notebook out when I get a chance to chat to you. So I could probably do this whole presentation myself based on all of the amazing things that you've shared. But this is a brilliant story as to what happens alongside success. And there was something that you learned at the time that you never knew. And it's a mistake you're never going to make again. So tell us about that one club. And
yeah, that's Spencer T. Olin. If any of you know the St. Louis market, it's an Arnold Palmer signature golf course. And it is a spectacular golf course. It's about 30 minutes away from the major population areas of St. Louis. So it's an inconvenient drive. And travel time is another factor in why people play golf where they play golf or don't. So it's an inconvenient travel time of a half hour round trip. So we did, back then, this is about 16 years ago, we did what at that time was our version of doing it. We cut the superintendent loose. We cut him loose and just like, let's see how good you are. And he was good. So the golf course within a few months was fabulous. And then we did breakfast and lunch and a beer or fountain drink included with your golf. So the seniors that came early had breakfast. They could also have lunch. There was no limit. You could have both. The guys that came in the afternoon had lunch and missed out on breakfast. Everybody got beer. I think we gave everybody 2 beers. And so the reason that works from an expense standpoint is that golf course was doing about 28,000 rounds a year in that market, and we went to 50,000 rounds. So 22,000 rounds at $40, you can give away a lot of hamburgers and beer and buy a lot of fertilizer, $800,000 of revenue there.
Sure.
So so we were swimming in it, right? We moved on to the next club and the next club based on Spencer T. Olin and this transformational success. We forgot to look backwards at the mess we'd made at Spencer T. And as what happened, because the club previously with a low number of rounds played did not put much focus on pace of play management. And that just continued. We didn't change, we didn't change anything. So now they're doing 50,000 rounds with the same system or lack of system in place. And so the rounds turned into 5 hours, 5.5 hours, eventually 6 hours. And of course, we were working in a big company environment with a lot of golf courses. All we saw was the rounds going down.
Sure.
So we tried to advertise more. We didn't even understand the problem. We just we're going to advertise more. And then when we finally figured out really late in the process that the people didn't want to come because they didn't want to spend an hour round trip plus 6 hours playing golf, no matter what we gave away, no matter how good the golf course was, didn't matter what anything was.
And you tried discount as well?
Then we started, we went down a path of, we'll just lower the rate. We'll bring them back. We'll slash the rate by 30%. Well, that didn't work either. We could not make them come back because everything we tried to make them come back what they heard was, oh shit, they're going to get busy again.
Mm.
And they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
From then forward, any club that we transformed the experience, we made sure that we focused on pace of play management as much as we focused on turf or food or sales or anything else. And we got a lot better. When I learned of your tool that you've built, to me, it was like, there was an instantaneous yes, because it allowed us to have a tool that we were never going to create for ourselves, never. It gave us a chance to get better. And at some, again, back to, all we have to do is be the best we can be at
Sure.
these things. And we've learned we win. If there's a market. If there's no market, you're out in the middle of nowhere, I wouldn't do any of the things I'm talking about. I wouldn't buy the course in the first place. I've learned that lesson the hard way. So you have to have customers. You have to have population density for what I'm describing to work. If you don't have that, forget it. Go ahead, Bodo, sorry.
So no, brilliant points raised. And I know one of the things that, that you understand, because it's so obviously logical, is that you needed to measure how you do this, right? You needed to find a way to measure how are we managing the pace. Once you realize that the success at this club at St. Louis had led to irreparable damage eventually, so you would not do it again. And one of the things that that the industry does or has been doing with the tools that have been available in the past is to look at sporadically, what is our goal time? What is our average round time, right? But there's a couple of flaws in that simply because the average just shows, it balances out the bad stuff. Where you can sell a good burger on average, if I'm one of the 20 people out of 100 that gets the bad burger, well, I'm not going to come back and have another burger, right? And it's the same with pace of play, even though golfers are long suffering simply because it's not done well at enough places, even though it's so important. So, and that is where we found such a good common ground in terms of your drive to really give your teams performance tools to measure, are they doing it well? Are they responding to issues? Are they getting on top of things? Because not all the players are slow. It's just a handful that are unaware, that are unmanaged, and they then impact the rest of the day. And then all of a sudden you've impacted a week, a month, a season, and you're leaving a lot of money on the table. So how, from your point of view, what has been the, in terms of measuring those outcomes, what is it that you are after? And I think that is where we're switching to our next, in terms of pro tips. What is it that you are after? What is it that you are looking for when it comes to management and the tools that you give to your teams, especially, and you mentioned earlier, the clubs, so the players come to the club to spend most of the time on the course. That's where you need to look after them, right? And you mentioned something that I thought was really poignant, and that's high competency. So I want to hand it back to you. What are the things that you guys do, and what are the tools that you put in place to measure and manage that?
Yes. So if you have the history I have of working with multiple clubs simultaneously, one of the things you learn pretty quickly is that your team is managing pace of play, and you have to manage them. So what's needed isn't just a pace of play management tool, but that tool has to include information to help you manage the people that are managing the pace of play. Otherwise, you don't really know how effectively they're using the tool. And just looking at their average pace of play, again, doesn't accomplish that, because that could include a terrible day yesterday where pace of play was 5:15, or it could just be a pocket where there was one group that was 2 holes behind and nobody did anything about it, and it affected 8 or 10 groups that had a terrible day. And so a lot more information is needed than these, grossed up average number. So what, for me, what has always made, having, been at the assistant golf pro level or the golf pro level or club manager level, what is important. If you're going to manage pace of play, you manage it one group at a time. Basically, you have to know when there's a problem. And so the traditional way is you just send a marshal out riding around in circles out there, and you try to fuss him not to do too much ball hawking or whatever. And you count on him to know that there's a problem, but it's real easy for him to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Sure.
And so what your tool does is it allows us to know when problems are developing so that we're getting ready to go intervene. And then we certainly know when there's a problem we want to intervene with. And so intervention is important because if you're going to manage pace of play on a group by group basis, foursome by foursome basis, and you're going to be highly competent every single day for every single customer, then knowing there's a problem is part of the puzzle. Knowing there's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Your tool does an amazing job of saying there's going to be a problem, there's going to be a problem. Oh, now there's a problem. But I need to know, how long did it take for my team to intervene? Was it 10 minutes? Was it 20 minutes? Was it 30 minutes? And so what your tool does, and we've been working on this and I so much appreciate it, is your tool generates a report now that tells me the time that it took from there being a problem, whatever each operator defines a problem. Okay, this group's this amount of my behind pace of play and this amount of time behind. However you define a problem, what's the time to intervention? So that's one important measurement. And we get that report daily. And there's nowhere to hide. And so you've isolated the problem groups. And then the next important fact is, well, how much time to resolution? It's one thing to intervene, but a lot of marshals go around and say, hey, try to do better. Try to do better. We need you to try to do better. Yeah, sure. So time to resolution is an important variable as well. So what we've asked your team to do, and you've responded, is we want to know time to intervention, time to resolution. We want a consolidated report that tells us those things on a daily basis. And then what we've done is we've assigned a team member, an offsite team member, to interact with the managers on a once a week, once every 2 week basis, to have a phone call to review those incidents that occurred that were a problem. How long did it take to intervention? How long did it take to resolution? And so what we want to do is measure those numbers more than average pace of play. We want to set for time to intervention, time to resolution.
So what you're talking about, Larry, is really managing the people that manage the problem, right? So, and how those people manage the problem, or they manage it before it becomes a problem. This is a live snapshot of, I think it's bridalwood. Does it look familiar, that shape?
It does, yes.
So that was this morning, and there's your one group that's falling out of position, which is very clearly marked, and here's already a tail of a few carts that are being held up. So these guys are delayed by that group in front of them, and it's only 4 minutes, right? So before this becomes an issue, and before any one of these guys is going to phone the clubhouse and says, why are you doing this to me? Your team knows about it, and your team knows that that they need to go out and do something.
My manager, because even if you're not a multi-club operator, you're a single club operator, and you're counting on your club manager to oversee this, or your head golf professional to oversee this. In reality, the manager and head golf professional are rarely behind the counter looking at the screen. They're in there, unfortunately, in today's world, they're in the office, they're on their laptop or their PC, they're returning emails, they're doing variance reports, they're reconciling things for the accounting people, they're turning in invoices, they're turning in time cards and payroll. There's a million things that they get drawn into that are about administering over the business and not running the daily experience. So this gets relegated to the counter staff and the starters and the marshals. And these are people that are making $12 an hour, $14 an hour, that are transient in their jobs. Many of them, they're college kids that are working for 1 year until they graduate. So their motivation to handle such a critical thing to their best ability is you have to provide that motivation. You have to provide motivation for them to care about them being highly proficient. They can be highly proficient if you give them a reason to be. And it has to start with, you know that they are, or you know that they're not. And they know you know.
But one of the things that stands out often is that generally, and obviously those are the people that you're trying to employ, they want to do well. They want to do well at their job, right? So if you give them the tool so they can be successful, they will excel, right?
100%. We never threaten, berate, or anything our folks. In fact, just the opposite. We try to establish goals that are shared success goals and reward them. I've done some crazy things. I give the Pro Shop guys 65-inch 4K TVs. They cost me about $600 each, and there's usually like 8 employees. So it's $5,000 to give every one of those guys a 65-inch TV. I gave them, Xbox One X or One S gamer consoles for $300 each. And again, that's $2,400. So for me, but again, those rewards are associated with achieving something. So, and they know that. They know that, hey, if we make some progress in this area, I'm going to get a new Xbox or PlayStation, or I'm going to get a new 65-inch TV, or we send guys on trips sometimes too, that really we achieve some amazing goals. So I think also linking having the right culture and relationship with the people you count on is critical as well. Very, very critical.
So when it comes to goal setting, I think what's important is that that your team are trained to be competent in managing that flow and that experience. So they would be setting expectations, and they know how to have conversations. So it's not a case of, hey guys, you're slow, get on with it. I would never expect that at any of your clubs, but what they would say, hey, according to the information that I have, you are a bit out of position. Let me help you get back in position, which is incentivizing in a very small way. But that is something that players respond to because they get it, right? But don't go and tell them they're slow. If they don't
that's parallel to a very important point, which is, if your strategy, if our strategy is for the customer to understand high competency in turf care, course conditions, high competency in music and electronics and TVs, right? High competency in food products, hamburgers and barbecue, high competency in pace of play management. Well, many of the customers that come through your golf course because of your high competency of your team, they don't know. They don't encounter a problem. They play in 4 hours. They leave satisfied. Now, they drank the beer and they ate the hamburger. They know you're competent there. They played on the turf. They know you're competent, high competent there. They don't know you're high competent with pace of play management unless you explain it to them. They might just think it just coincidentally was nice. I don't want them to think it's coincidentally a nice day. I want them to be told at check-in, or by the starter about the Tagmarshal system and there's something that tracks all players in every cart. And I want it on a great big screen behind the counter so that when they check in, it's like, what's that? Oh, that's how we manage pace of play. Your time is very important to us. We know your time is important to you and it's important to us. I want somebody to say that. And so when we do go out there and there's a problem, then I want the people handling the problem to reference back to this. But even when there isn't a problem, is not a problem, I want them driving by the group, and I want them congratulating the groups
Yes.
and saying, oh, I got my handheld. My system tells me today we're at 405 and our Tagmarshal, everybody's green on Tagmarshal. It's a good day here. And I want them to teach the customer that we're highly competent, and we have a tool that, quite frankly, most golf courses still won't invest in because it views it as too expensive. It's like my Sony TVs and my music. I want the customer to learn that I'm not out of money, that I'm not managing their experience on a shoestring. I want them to know that.
I think there's one other barrier of why, I mean, you and many others certainly been pioneers, and now we're on 300 clubs, some of the best. So we're certainly seeing that growth. But one of the barriers initially that we found in conversation was that managers used to say, well, but we don't have a problem. We don't have a pace of play problem. Well, how do you define it? How do you measure it? You never thought you had a problem in St. Louis until it was too late. But also you never, you know, I would think you're viewing it as an opportunity rather than a problem. So you're so preemptive and you're doing it by design. Now, I just want to quickly skip through. This is a month at Legacy, which is another club that you guys run, that shows that your target goal time is 416. It's a busy month, about 2,500 players through, and you're playing that month in 3 hours 52. But down here, that pace style it shows that there's only a small portion of play that goes over, and it only on sporadic days. So what it helps your team do is also effectively allocate staffing when it's needed, right? The right time of day, the right days of the week. So it's not a one-size-fits-all management, but the information really informs your team so they can be more proactive around it and don't waste time on it either when it's not needed. I want to jump ahead because we need to stay on time. And that's, we've got about 12 minutes. So I want to just also encourage a few questions if you have them. Larry's the best person to ask questions to if you've got a few minutes for an answer, because it's not a 3-word answer normally, which is a good thing. I've got one more Q&A to throw, no, a poll to throw at everyone. Where's my second poll? Having listened to Larry now, and also with the planning that you do and looking ahead to next season, or maybe you are in the South and you are now doing a bit less and you're going to get busy again, what are the key experience factors that you see as opportunities to invest in that will have a big positive impact? What have you identified? Let's just launch that poll. Again, you can pick a few here. What are the things that you've identified that you want to do better at your club into the future, maybe on Monday, maybe next season, maybe as you can, as budget allows? What are they? What are the things that you want to invest in?
Sure. Well, for me, where we're at is at this moment, and I appreciate, Bodo, I do so much appreciate you bragging on our behalf about how accomplished we are at all of these things. But our biggest opportunity is the improvement that still exists in all of our core priorities. We don't need any new priorities. We have things to tune up as far as course conditioning. We certainly have room to improve with pace of play management and food and beverage and our sales culture. I think our music and our TVs are good. I don't think I need much more focus there. So I think we've decided for this upcoming year, we're just going to sharpen our knife sharper on the things that cut and make the biggest difference.
And I think one of the key factors here is just to measure what matters, right? And get as much information and data as you possibly can. And there you have a huge advantage. One, your experience, but also you can measure your clubs against one another. And you can learn from within that. Let me just end the poll and share the results. So what we're seeing here, staff training is coming out highly, pace and flow of play as an opportunity for impact, course conditioning, on-course experience. Those are sort of the high floating impact opportunities that the people on the webinar are wanting to invest in. Let me just do a screen grab so we can share that later as well. So we've got one last point to discuss, Larry, and that is a very important one. So now that you're doing all of these things as well as you possibly can, how does it translate into price elasticity and profitability? Because a lot of clubs are looking the other way in terms of how can we make things cheaper to attract people, you know, because we're competing with others. And that cycle is what Golf Now and others have been feeding. But how do you use this opportunity? And I want to just throw two of these clubs that you're working with and their results into the mix here. This is simplified average round times, but the average round times is a byproduct of good management, good day-to-day management. So how does price elasticity happen? What's the impact? And then tell us, as part of that, how you've transformed Bridalwood, because I think that's one of your brag horses as far as success goes, and for good reasons.
Well, I'm very proud of what's happened at Bridalwood. We bought it from Stephen Held and the Dominion Group. I know the Dominion Group eventually sold out, but Dominion Group was held in high regard in the golf industry as a competent operator. The club was running on about $2.7 million in revenue and about $350,000 to the bottom line. So in our second year, our revenue was $4.1 million. We had grown the revenue $1.4 million. And we had grown the bottom line to $870,000. So we'd grown it a little over $500,000. And like I think I mentioned to you the other day, the number I'm most proud of is the fact that if you do the math on that, we're spending $850,000 more than they did. And that was our strategy and our path toward making more money. It's a wonderful investment. It'll do, even with COVID this year, we'll do 4.5 million in revenue this year, and we'll do $1.1 million on the bottom line. And we've done that without running a single newspaper ad. We used to, but we stopped about 6-8 months ago. We don't run any email discounts pricing. And our Golf Now pricing, except for like in the super heat of summer in July and August between 11 and 1, where nobody wants to play in Dallas, except for that little window, we do no discounting on Golf Now either. And some customers come through Golf Now because that's how they want to book their tee times, but they don't have a price reason to do that. It's just a convenience thing if that's what they want to do. So we have proven that Bridalwood and many of the other clubs, Legacy is another one, but I could list 6 or 8, that by focusing on these priorities and being the best we can be, customers come in droves for it because it's different. It's different and better than the choices they have from other operators. And so they come and they keep coming, and we get busier and busier, and our reaction to getting busier is to raise the rates. And we just raise the rates, and they keep coming, and we keep raising the rates. And so that's what I mean by price elasticity. As you move further and further away from commoditization of golf, people say, well, who's your competition? I'm like, I don't have any competition. Well, aren't you a golf course against this golf course or that golf course? I said, well, you need to go to all 3 of these golf courses, and then you tell me if they're competition. Because I don't think they're competition. And that's not, it's not an ego thing. It's like their greens aren't as good, their food's not as good, they don't manage pace of play as well. They don't do the most important things nearly as well as I do them. They just don't. They don't have music in the carts, they don't have music at the driving range. So they're not competition because they don't do the same thing I do, not even remotely. And so if you have something that's unique and freestanding on its own, and it's different and better, then you don't have competitive pricing anymore. You just have this tolerance. What can people afford? What can they afford for what they want? If you give them what they want, the only question then turns out, well, what price would it take to run them off? What price would it take to make them go choose an inferior experience. And so we're on that journey. We have not found that price. We have not found any of our golf.
That's where pricing turns to value, right? So it's not a price decision, it's a value decision.
We have not had any of our price increases do anything other than encourage us to take more price increases and to make the experience better. We always make the experience better before we take the price increase. We teach the customer ahead of time that it's worth more, and then we charge them. And then we go back and we make it the same things, these same priorities, we just make them better. And then we charge them. And they keep coming, Bodo.
So you earn the right to ask for more money, right? It makes a lot of sense.
Yes. And you cannot fail at pace of play management. You can't do it. If you fail at pace of play management, you teach them that you're incompetent at being busy.
And they will vote with their feet eventually, right?
They absolutely will.
Where COVID has actually been an opportunity for golf to attract more players again and get those people that used to play 5 times a year now to come and play 20 times a year, because they've got more flexibility working from home. They've got more flexibility with less business travel, and they've got much less competition or alternatives, you know, in terms of, I can't go to the game. I can't go to whatever big events that I would normally go to. So the golf course is the place to be. One of the things that you mentioned is that generally in sort of local golf space, players rotate between clubs and they move around and they check things out. They go where their friends go. And you found that it takes a certain amount of time for you to build loyalty within a player. And you need to continuously deliver every single time, consistently. And that's when this works. So that is that also what has worked at Bridlewood as one of those?
It's worked at every one of our golf courses. One of the things we studied years and years ago was how few really loyal customers you have that play your golf course 20 times a year or more. What you have is an enormous number of 80% of the golfers at public golf courses play that specific golf course 4 times a year or less. 80%. So your customers, the bulk of your customers, the big mass of your individual customers are very infrequent, disloyal, low usage customers. And so getting them to redistribute their play in your favor, to completely recalculate where they play as a group, where they play individually, you've got to teach them repetitively, over and over again, that you're the choice that they should be making. And that's why it's so important you don't miss on the key factors. The guy comes, he may not come for 6 more months. He has to know you're high competent at pace of play, whether he has a problem or he doesn't have a problem. That's where we give away our food if somebody doesn't buy it. I want them to, the only way you're going to know how competent we are at barbecue is if you eat it.
Sure.
You don't have time to eat it, I'm going to give it to you. And as a sample, I'm going to give you our ice cream. I'm going to give it to you because I don't want you to come and go and not experience these things. I know you're going to experience the turf and the music and the televisions. I got to make sure you experience the food and the pace of play. Anyway.
I've got a good question here, because obviously your focus is predominantly on daily fee courses, but you do have some private clubs as well, if I'm not mistaken, or semi-private. So the question is from Paul: do you think pace of play is important for private courses that don't do many rounds?
Absolutely. I think members are especially, we've got a private club in Atlanta, Hamilton Mill. Members are especially hold you to a standard of high competency at a private club. They kind of can be dismissive about low competency at daily fee or municipal golf courses because that's kind of what they expect. But if they're a private club member, they expect very high competency when it comes to pace of play management. And for them, all they care about is the group ahead of them. They don't care whether you're doing 100 rounds a day, 50 rounds a day, or 350 rounds a day. Because what they care about as a private member is you know what their personal experience is, and you're managing their personal experience to their expectations. So I would say at a private club especially, it doesn't matter the number of rounds.
I just want to echo that in that we've got about 40% of our clubs are private, and some of them are 9,000 rounds a year. They're so low traffic, but they're saying that every single round needs to be excellent because of the type of member that we have. And then there's other clubs that are saying, well, if we can manage the space more effectively, we can actually create more inventory for ourselves, and we can give more players a shot to play on a Saturday. That means we can have a larger member base, which means we can drive more revenue. So that's the other side of the coin. Are there any other questions? True. We are perfectly on time with Larry, which, oh, there's another one. Great, thanks, keep the questions coming. So how important is it to get the team staff buy-in when implementing a new system like this?
How important is it to get the team? I missed a word or two.
So the team or the staff to buy in when you're implementing a system like this?
Immeasurable how important it is, because you're dependent on them. Ultimately, you're dependent on them. And so, this is one of the things that the team has to understand, that you value enough to invest in their success, not just the Tagmarshal investment, but the investment in them being successful using it. And that's back where I want to create goals and incentives and recognitions and rewards for team members when they prove that they're high competent using the tool. I'm going to reward them. Without that, you got no chance.
Yeah, it's just a tool, right? It needs a driver. Yeah.
It's a monitor in the pro shop that has a bunch of things on it. That's all it is without them.
Sure, and it needs a driver, and the driver needs to know where they're going and what the expectations are. So there's one more question from Mike. Have you implemented the system at any of your clubs because they had a pace of play problem?
Well, yes. I mean, I view that all of my clubs had a pace of play problem, and they all still have a pace of play problem, and they always will, because it's impossible to run 300 golfers a day through 200 days a year and not have pace of play problems. I don't care how good Tagmarshal is. I don't care how good my people are. I don't care how good anything is. So my job is simply to be the best we can be. And in a case like this, it's really never good enough. It's good enough to reward people and recognize them and celebrate successes, but I'm never going to be satisfied that I'm never going to be fully satisfied.
Sure, it's the same question. Do you have a burger problem? Well, that's not a measure of your success, right? You want to have the best.
I want every burger, every hamburger to be memorable. Every single one. Yes. Barbecue sandwich, and quite frankly, they're not. Sometimes the brisket dries out a little bit, and the chef tries to hold it too long, not have food waste, and he serves brisket and it's smothered in barbecue sauce because it's lost too much moisture, and it's a bad decision. So, but it's going to happen. I'm not firing any chefs over it. It's going to happen. I have to be aware, though. That's the important thing. We have to be aware.
Absolutely. There's one more question by John. What about the courtesy of letting a group play through? Is that a lost art today? How do your teams normally manage that? You drive mostly car traffic. How is that something that you're giving them freedom to do, or is that something that the players you feel need to know how to do themselves?
We give each golf course the freedom to execute with their customers, because seniors, like the high senior market in Florida, is very different than the high beer drinking younger market in Dallas. It's just very different. And so I don't try to impose a one approach to any individual club. So certainly letting groups play through, and I'm going to count on the discretion of the person handling the problem.
For sure. Larry, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for giving of your time and for sharing this brilliant insight. And also thanks to everyone online for the good questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to share this recording with everyone so that in case you want to check back in or share it with others, you're welcome to. And also we always know that there's people who can't make it or they can make half of it. So we'll make sure that you have the information at hand. Larry, thanks. That was fantastic.
Sure.
Really enjoyable. Super insightful.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
You too. Enjoy your time in Colorado.
I will. I will indeed.